Officer Garrett Rolfe, the man who is being charged with murder for shooting and killing Rayshard Brooks last year, is now back on the Atlanta police force. So, of course, Officer Garrett Rolfe is a police officer. And back on June 12th of last year, there was an incident that took place right outside of a Wendy's. We talked about it on this channel, and we did a breakdown and an analysis. Was this a legitimate shooting or not? And we're going to do a quick recap on this, and then we're going to go into the story, because Rayshard Brooks obviously is dead, and Garrett Rolfe was charged with, I believe, 11 different criminal violations, including felony murder, okay, for shooting and killing him. Then he was just recently rehired, unsuspended, readmitted to the Atlanta Police Department, and they're going to give him back pay for all of the time that he missed. And many people are scratching their head saying, wait a minute, why is your prosecution, the prosecutor's office in Atlanta, charging him with murder, but the police department, which is sort of closely connected with the prosecutor's office, right? Because the police go and they charge people with or arrest people for crimes. The government then prosecutes those crimes. So they're very closely related. If the prosecution is prosecuting a police officer with murder and the police department brings him back onto the force, what's happening here? This doesn't make a lot of sense. Not to mention the fact that he shot and killed somebody who was running away from him. All right, so let's get into the story. We're going to do a brief recap. Then we're going to go through the actual analysis. I want to show you what the Atlanta Civil Division Board, whatever the agency that gets to make this decision about whether Garrett Rolfe can, in fact, continue to be an officer, they have a 4-page opinion about why they decided the way that they did. So we're going to go through that. We're going to start by going over to nymag.com. The story written by Chas Danner, or Chaz maybe, says everything we know about the killing of Rayshard Brooks by the Atlanta police. So this is a story back from June 18, 2020. On Friday, June 12, 27-year-old black man Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by Atlanta police in what Mayor Keisha Bottoms called an unjustified use of deadly force. Brooks' death comes weeks after nationwide unrest after the George Floyd. Garrett Rolfe, the officer who killed Brooks, has been fired and now faces 11 charges, including felony murder. The other officer on scene, Dave Brosnan, is facing 3 charges, including aggravated assault. So this happened about a year ago, coming up now. What happened during the incident? Shortly after 10:30 p.m. Friday night, 2 Atlanta police officers, they rolled up on Rayshard Brooks. He was asleep in his car, obstructing other vehicles in the drive-through lane of a Wendy's restaurant on University Avenue in Atlanta. Okay, this happens a lot, right? I've been doing DUI law for quite some time now. This happens a lot. People drink too much alcohol. They fall asleep in their car, and they typically do it in inopportune places. And this happens, right? People will go through a drive-through. They'll feel like they're intoxicated, make a quick stop on the way home. Not endorsing it, not condoning any of this stuff. I don't think what Rayshard Brooks did was admirable or a good thing, or that this is conducive to how a society should function. But these things happen, right? And the point here is, what do we do as a consequence of these incidents? Let's go through the story. According to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, which is investigating the shooting, the officer gave Brooks a sobriety test, which he failed. GBI says that when officers then went to arrest Brooks, he resisted and a struggle ensued, prompting one of the officers to deploy their taser. Brooks was able to obtain the taser before trying to run away. According to GBI, officers pursued Brooks on foot, and during the chase, Brooks turned and pointed the taser at the officer. The officer then fired his weapon, striking Brooks. Brooks was taken to the hospital, but died following surgery. So I'm going to show you 2 videos. We're going to take a look at sort of a side angle video, and we're going to take a look at a bystander video. So you'll notice on this first video that there are a lot of cars here that are sort of in line for the Wendy's, right? A lot of people are hungry. It's, what is this? Almost midnight. People got to get something to eat. So this is the Wendy's outside camera. We're going to watch this angle. Then we're going to watch another angle from a bystander. In both of these videos, we end it right before the shooting takes place. Okay, so right before the officer actually discharges his weapon, we don't see Rayshard Brooks fall to the ground. There are nobody dies in this video. We learned that he died later after the fact in a hospital, but still a content warning. I have to be very specific about these things because of YouTube. So content warning, right? This is coming up. I'm going to show you this. Nobody dies in this video, so this is just the interaction between 2 people. Here it is. And there's no sound here. So there's what we just saw, okay? And it stops right there. The officer basically pulls his gun out and shoots him. So let's watch that one more time. And you're going to see running away. Rayshard's running away, turns with the taser, gun comes out, pop, 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 and that's the end of it. Okay, so that's what a lot of this question was about, whether this was self-defense. So allegedly, the taser was already discharged because they tried to tase him, so it was a kind of an empty taser, and he turns around like this, aims the taser back. So, people who are sort of on the side of law enforcement, they say, well, it was a deadly weapon, right? The taser could be lethal, deadly force, even though it's less than lethal force. The people are saying, well, you could hit them in the face, or you could tase them and incapacitate them and then get their gun. So it could be sort of an extension or an evolution from non-lethal force into lethal force. And those are the arguments. So in other words, what Garrett Rolfe did was self-defense. He was justified in the shooting because he was responding to a threat of deadly force. I don't buy that at all. I mean, we can see this right here. He was literally running away, right? He's running away from the guy. And as we're going to see in the next video, truthfully, what I think this is all about is the officers are very mad that this guy just whooped their butts, truthfully. So he's running away. He's pissed that this guy just kicked their A's right on camera. And so as soon as he gets the first opportunity, pulls out a gun, doesn't want to chase him anymore. Guy is running away, not a threat, has a taser gun, which I could be wrong factually on this, but I think it had already been expended. And there are two officers there, both chasing him. So I thought that this was in fact a murder. I thought that this was an angry officer who was just trying to, stop a fleeing suspect. Now, you can say that what Rayshard Brooks did was bad. It was an assault on the officers, that they could have shot him earlier. And I wouldn't have argued about that. But when he is running away, when he is fleeing, at that moment in time, you no longer get to use deadly force because the threat of deadly force against you in the other direction has dissipated. And he is now fleeing. So you don't get to shoot somebody in the back after the threat has already dissipated. So that's been my perspective on it. I know it's not a popular perspective with many of you, but it is my perspective. And I just wanted to share that with you if you missed the last time that we talked about it. So I want to show you again this second video. And again, we stopped this before there is the shooting. But this is a little bit more violent because what we're going to see is, if you watch the full video, what you see is that they do give him some field sobriety tests. When we went through this in depth, we covered the whole body camera. And I actually think that we got penalized for this specific video because we went through all of it. And so we're being careful on this one. But previously, they go through all of the field sobriety tests, and he fails them because he's under the influence. So then they go to arrest him. He's negotiating with them. He's being very friendly and cooperative. They go to arrest him, and he's got priors, so he knows he's probably going back to prison. So he freaks out, and this turns into an altercation that we're going to pick up right here because a bystander who's sitting in a car starts to record. They pull out their cell phone. Oh my God, something's happening right here. And we're going to pick this up. Now, you're going to notice it's two officers on one Rayshard Brooks. Rayshard Brooks is still able to break himself free. These officers were not, their takedown skills were lacking. And he breaks free and then runs away. They're both obviously irritated about it. And there's even, we're going to get into the rest of the story, but let's take a watch at this second video. All right, so the camera then pans over and you see sort of the rest of it, but we're not going to show that, obviously. So that's what you saw, right? It was an altercation. I think arguably in the middle of that tussle, if there was a gun that went off and Rayshard Brooks was killed, yeah, you're in the middle of a fight. But once he gets up and runs away from you, that has ended. And so, now you don't have to shoot somebody at that moment in time. You radio back up, call the helicopter, go on a foot chase. You're going to capture the guy. You don't need to shoot him and kill him in the back. Shoot him in the back and then kill him. So this is what we have. Police identified the officer. Of course, this is Officer Rolfe, Garrett Rolfe, who is the officer who was charged with these crimes, 11 crimes, including murder, for the officer who shot him, Fulton County District Attorney issued arrest warrants in the shooting death, 11 counts, felony murder, aggravated assault, criminal damage to property, violations of oath to office. Officer Devin Brosnan is also being charged with aggravated assault. Howard said the district attorney's office was able to interview 10 witnesses to the shooting and watch 8 videos that recorded the event. Those videos include surveillance, body camera, personal cell phone video. They also viewed physical evidence, including inspecting the crime scene, canvassing the area, examining tasers that were used prior to bringing these charges. Howard said they concluded from the witness statements that Brooks never presented himself as a threat, which I disagree with. He was there for about 10 seconds. Even though Mr. Brooks was slightly impaired, his demeanor during the incident was almost jovial, Howard said, which he was until the arrest took place. And that's what I was talking about. He was very friendly. Well, can you just let me home? Let me drive home, right? Trying to be cooperative until hands behind the back, then the incident happened. Howard said for 41 minutes, 17 seconds, he followed every instruction, answered the questions. He never displayed any aggressive behavior during the 41 minutes and 17 seconds. Howard said following the shooting, the officers failed to give Brooks any medical attention for 2 minutes and 12 seconds. They also say that during those 2 minutes and 12 seconds, Officer Rolfe actually kicked Mr. Brooks as he laid on the ground while he was there fighting for his life. Officer Brosnan actually stood on Brooks's shoulder. Howard said his office concluded at the time of the death that he did not pose a threat to the officers at the time of his death. Right before that, he did. Okay. And officers are supposed to be trained and not impulsive, reactionary people, right? If somebody injures you, you might say, well, I just responded, right? I instinctually responded. I hit him back, or I did something else, or I pulled out my gun. I acted irrationally. I acted stupidly because of my emotions. They got the better of me. I wasn't thinking clearly. I did something nuts, right? We've all been there, all done or said something that was like, I can't believe I did that. Well, law enforcement, when it comes to firing your weapon, you're not supposed to succumb to those same pressures. You're supposed to say, all right, that 2 seconds ago, 1 second ago, that was deadly force. This is not anymore. And not make that mistake. He did. So here it says, we have also concluded that Rolfe was aware that the taser in Brooks' possession, it was fired twice. And once it's fired twice, it presented no danger to him or any other persons. Howard said Brooks and Rolfe were 18 feet and 3 inches apart at the time the first shot was fired. At the time the shot was fired, the utterance made by Rolfe was, I got him. Okay. A fleeing person. 18 feet away. Got him. Howard said his office is recommending no bond for Rolfe and a $50,000 bond for Brosnan. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms released a statement about the decision Wednesday saying, "It's my hope justice will be served." Georgia Bureau of Investigation is also investigating the shooting. Howard said he worked with GBI and ADP to reach the decision on the charges. At GBI said Facebook posts they were not aware charges would be filed. All right, so then we have July 1st. Former APD officer charged with Rayshard Brooks' murder. He bonds out of jail. Okay, so first and foremost, the prosecutor here says that, yep, we're going to charge him. We want no bond. Court says, well, we're going to give him bond. Judge said $500,000 bond, okay, which is just crazy. So this guy shoots and kills somebody, $500,000 bond. Capitol Hill rioters didn't shoot and kill anybody. No bond, zero bond. Like, you cannot get a bond. Not a $10 million bond, not a $100 million bond. No bond, because you were inside the Capitol building that day. Or not even, right? Huge swaths of people were not even in the Capitol building. They also got charged with crimes. We've talked about them. Go check the archives. They're there. Zero bond. No bond. You cannot get it. This guy, $500,000 bond. Even though the government said, well, this was a murder. He still gets out. The other people don't. Ask yourself. The bond does come with conditions: ankle monitor, curfew, 6 a.m., 12 hours a day. Must surrender his passport. Not allowed to possess or carry any firearms. Not have any contact with family members of Brooks or any witnesses. No contact with other police officers. Defense attorney Bill Thomas and Noah Pines argued that Rolfe was not a flight risk, submitted 28 character letters on Rolfe's behalf. Brooks' family released the statement after he was granted bond, saying they're unhappy with it. They want to change in our system, as they should. And then here we have now that an Atlanta detective also sided with this officer. So remember, we just sort of finished the Chauvin stuff. And with Chauvin, it was an expert witness battle. The government had the better expert witnesses. I think you can say that without even argument. They were clearly better. And they may have won the entire case for him, particularly Dr. Tobin, one expert witness. So we're going to see that same thing happen again with these other officer-involved shootings. It's already, the framework is already being fleshed out for us. And it's already starting in this case because there is an Atlanta detective who wrote this letter supporting Garrett Rolfe, basically saying, no, this was self-defense. This was lethal threat, and he was totally justified in doing what he did. Let's take a look at that letter. In a defense filing for former Atlanta police officer who has been charged with felony murder, Atlanta Police Department homicide detective assigned to the case, Al Hogan, sided with Rolfe, noting that he would have brought 10 charges against Brooks had he survived the incident. Atlanta PD detective said that he would have charged Brooks, not Rolfe, with 10 counts, including multiple felonies. Captioning a screenshot, Holloway noted, usually law enforcement are witnesses for the state, but this is from a defense filing. It says, I am a homicide investigator that was assigned to the case. Let's take a look at this letter. My name is Al Hogan. Been a Georgia certified law enforcement officer since 1987. Currently assigned as a detective in the homicide unit. In addition, I'm a member of the major incident team, which is a small team of homicide detectives. As an MIT investigator, these are my responsibilities, help everybody do all this work. I am the homicide MIT investigator that was assigned to the case involving Brooks and Rolfe. I was called in from my home shortly after the incident. I gathered all the audio and video and interviewed people there. After leaving the scene, I was informed that Brooks was alive and critical. I returned to the homicide office to review all the evidence that I had gathered and to determine if Rayshard Brooks' behavior warranted any criminal charges. My investigation showed that Rayshard Brooks' behavior did, in fact, warrant several criminal charges, but I was unable to pursue because he died. So we have DUI, okay, fine. Felony obstruction, okay. Aggravated assault, yes. Battery against an officer, yes. Theft by a taking, probably, which would be the taser. Removal of a weapon, sure. Robbery, arguably, right? I don't know what the Georgia statutes look like, but okay. So you could charge him with those seven different offenses. You could charge him with 100 different offenses. Do any of those involve the death penalty? Not to my knowledge. I don't care if you charge him with 100 different violations. Garrett Rolfe is not the judge and the sentencing authority. Okay, he doesn't get to just shoot him. He gets due process just like everybody else does in this country. He was running away, so you don't get to shoot him in the back, even though he just embarrassed you. Not allowed. The officer now, who did in fact fatally shoot him, is reinstated, back on the force, not even a problem. Here we go to the Washington Post. Letitia Beecham says, the police officer who fatally shot Rayshard Brooks has been reinstated. The Atlanta Civil Service Board reinstated him because, quote, he was not afforded his right to due process. What? What? Was Rayshard Brooks? Did he get any due process? Okay, detective homicide, detective Mr. whatever, wants to charge him with 7 different violations. Great. Charge him. Arrest him, pick him up, charge him in a court of law. You don't shoot the guy. You know how much due process he got? 0. Think Rayshard Brooks got a little bit more than, I'm sorry, did Garrett Rolfe get a little bit more than that? Yeah. Rolfe's reinstatement comes nearly 2 weeks after a hearing by the board in which his attorney argued that he was not given a fair amount of time to defend himself against the firing. Not authorized a union official to represent him at the employee response hearing, did not violate any rules in the shooting. Rolfe shot Brooks, got all that. Lance LaRusso, Rolfe's attorney, told the Washington Post his client is eligible to receive back pay and full reinstatement. We are very pleased at this action. Consider it the first step in the total vindication of Officer Garrett Rolfe. We'll see. All right, so let's take a look at the opinion. This comes over from the City of Atlanta Civil Service Board, effective date. So you'll notice the hearing date was on April 22nd. Then they're going to backdate this, right? So the effective date, this takes effect starting June 14th. They're going to roll it all the way back. Who's on this board so we can make sure that they're memorialized in internet history? We have Council Representative, City of Atlanta, Allegra Lawrence Hardy. We have Rod Gransky. We have Lisa Halder. We have the City of Atlanta witnesses, Devin Brosnan, Assistant Chief Todd Coit, Sergeant William Dean, Appellant Garrett Rolfe. Counsel for the appellant, Garrett Rolfe. We also have Lance LaRusso. We have Ken Davis, witnesses, Assistant Chief Todd Coit, Sergeant William Dean, appellant Garrett Rolfe. So a bunch of cops and a bunch of cop lawyers are all sitting around determining whether to reinstate a cop and give another cop a bunch of back pay. All right, good. We have statement of authority. We have their authority here. We have the Atlanta Civil Service Board mission statement. We got findings of fact. At the time of the dismissal, the appellant, so Rolfe, had worked for Atlanta PD for over 7 years. He graduated, was sent to the city's Zone 3, Effective termination was on June 14th. In the late night, he responded to a complaint. During the encounter, occupant left its vehicle. Officers attempted to make an arrest. Incident occurred. Taser was used. First responding officer had originally been dispatched to the scene. As the appellant gave chase, so as Rolfe chased him, he deployed his city-issued taser, deployed the taser, now in his possession, Rolfe fired it back towards, Brooks fired it back towards Rolfe. All right. The appellant then responded by firing 3 rounds from his city-issued handgun, striking the citizen. June 13th, acting under delegated authority, NPAA recommended dismissal because of the actions on that night. NPAA stated that it had the right to respond. The appellant's union representative, oh, there it is, the union representative from the police department. You know how many times I get on here and scream about the unions? Guess what? We knew it was coming. You knew that was coming, right? They erroneously acknowledged receiving the incident, the notice of final adverse action. Okay, all this is being transmitted back and forth. The additional errors, so they marked the wrong boxes, essentially. All right. As previously stated, the panel's sole mission is to determine if the city's imposition complied with the code. Here's what we've got. We have NPAA. They're contrasting the hearing, employee's response. During his testimony, the appellant, Rolfe, expressed a desire to respond to the city's proposed notice of action. Sergeant William Dean, veteran of 25 years, testified that the dismissal seemed rushed and sufficient time was not provided for the appellant to submit a response. Due to heightened community concerns surrounding the event, he was not to be inside city limits for his own safety. Sergeant Dean testified that different arrangements could have been made, but basically he was not there. So in conclusion, due to the city's failure to comply with several provisions of the code and the information received during witness testimony, the board concludes he was not afforded his right to due process. Therefore, they grant the appeal and they revoke the dismissal. So the whole, who signed off on this? Let's talk about these people. Who signed off on this order? We have Sterling Peaves, who's the chairperson of this board. We have Plemon L. Amin. Maybe. We have Robert D. Hawkins. So those are the people who say, come on back on board here, Mr. Rolfe. What you did was A-okay with us. So let's take some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Macabre says, 8519 says, I'm sorry, but considering the totality of the circumstances in this case, this was a clear, justified shoot. The charge was another politically motivated by the then incumbent AG. All right. There you go, right? So you have an alternative perspective there. I disagree, but I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure that many people in our audience do. We have LT13 says, it did deploy, and I heard he can shoot to protect the public because he has now armed, and the taser still works on skin contact. That's another argument, right? If you're going to be defending Officer Rolfe, what do you say? You got to change the taser from a less than lethal weapon into a lethal weapon. So now you could say, yep, the taser still works on skin contact, but is it still less than lethal, or is it lethal? Well, I guess arguably in a very small percentage of cases, then it could be lethal, right? So, the police want to have it both ways. They want it to be less than lethal force, but then they also want it to be lethal force when it's being used against them. You can't. It's a standard one way or the other. But I think it is a good defense. If you're going to be defending Rolfe, then the idea here is that this was a legitimate threat that justified self-defense and an escalated use of force. We have _shade says, Brooks ran most likely because he was on the first batch of COVID prisoners let out. Would have went right back for violating probation. He was also had a very bad child abuse with his own and possibly another, if I recall correctly. That's right. I think you're absolutely right about all of that, right? Yes, COVID prisoner let out, violating probation, child abuse. Yeah, right. I mean, a lot of other circumstances, I think, that can contribute to that. But Yacht Rock Guy says, not to sound naive, but what's so difficult about complying with an officer's request? Well, the cops just shrug their shoulders and give up because a suspect won't comply. No, I mean, so I think that you're right, that ordinarily speaking, that there is nothing difficult about complying with an officer's directions. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Okay. What Rayshard Brooks did was not appropriate. I'm not excusing that at all. What he did was illegal. It was criminal. It was assault on the officers. It was reprehensible conduct. I'm not excusing it. I think that there are probably some good justifications for it. Why is a person that way? I think you could, unravel the layers of the onions of a person and dial down into that. That's not really relevant here. What is relevant is that police are allowed to use a deadly use of force when they're facing a deadly threat. And once that deadly threat subsides, so does the proportionate response from law enforcement. And we went through this during the Chauvin trial, right? We saw the graph, we saw the different proportions. And so it's, in my opinion, Yacht Rock Guy, it's not difficult to comply with law enforcement. And you should, because it only goes downhill from there, right? The cops are going to win. If you're under arrest, they're going to get you one way or the other. It doesn't serve you to run. You're only going to make things worse on yourself. So once you're in that position, yeah, you have to comply because there is no alternative. And even in the George Floyd case, we saw that witness who was walking down the street was even yelling to Floyd, "You can't win, man. You can't win. Just give up and let it go." So I agree that what Rayshard Brooks did, not okay, not the ideal response. Same with George Floyd, same with Dante Wright, and the list goes on and on. Now, that doesn't, the fact that they are not able to comply or that they're having a difficult time for whatever reason, maybe they are mentally, challenged, maybe they're having a mental emergency, doesn't matter really what it is. It doesn't justify a shooting and killing unless there is a deadly threat, because we have other mechanisms in place to deal with these things. It's called the court of law and due process. So while I understand that, officers are in difficult situations and they make snap decisions and all of that stuff, they are trained. I've made this point. Their duty, their obligation, the responsibility that they accept when they swear that oath is that they are going to make those tough decisions, and they have to err on the side of life. They don't get to shoot somebody in the back who's fleeing from them with a taser that has already been discharged, in my humble opinion. But I also respect and really, really, really respect the opposite perspective on this, because I think that you can make an argument that, right, he was, at least at the first part of the altercation, an active threat, and a shooting would have been justified at that moment. But I think that as soon as he started running away, literally away from them, that's when the use of force has to taper back down. And law enforcement knows that some people, some demographics in this community, in our society, some people are just going to be off. And law enforcement knows that, and they're prepared for that. This is a foreseeable consequence of being a law enforcement officer, and they have policies and procedures, and they have things that they have to follow in order to do their job. And in this case, in my opinion, they didn't follow those. There was a different way to approach this, and it didn't happen. We have Macabre 8519 says, also, it was never confirmed that the stolen taser had discharged both cartridges, or that Rolfe knew this to be the case, other than the former prosecutors stating this publicly. Yeah, okay, so maybe that's accurate. Yeah, I mean, I was reading from that article, which in fact may have been old, so there may have been new evidence that they didn't know that they were both discharged, but that former prosecutor who's out there, of course, is saying the opposite of that. We have Sharon Quidney says, it's this kind of crap that gives so much traction to BLM and defund police narratives. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think so too. It's like, listen, there are certain shootings. Like, listen, you don't have to defend every single person, every single police officer who does something, who's involved in an incident. Okay, you don't have to defend every single one of them. There are bad cops; they do bad things. Same thing. Same perspective for me, right? I'm naturally inclined to defer or default to the position that the police have all the power, they have all of the responsibility, they have all the training, they have all of the resources. So the burden to act appropriately in difficult situations, it defaults to them. They're the ones most equipped to deal with these split decisions. They have more skill set, more tools than Dante Wright does or than Rayshard Brooks does. So they have to take control of the situation. It's just like if you've ever played sports, or if you've ever, played around with a young child. Okay, you know that you have the upper hand in that game. You know that you can control the outcome because you have the training, the education, the intelligence, whatever. Okay, the analogy that I can use is when I was doing mixed martial arts before COVID, if I'm wrestling with somebody who is a newcomer, I'm not going to go 100%. I'm going to taper down my level of activity so that I don't crush that other person. It's a proportional response. So it's the same type of concept with law enforcement. It's supposed to be proportional. They're supposed to be able to make those hard decisions. And when they screw up, they got to be held accountable for that. We don't have to just say, well, look, everything that they did is without any repercussions, or anything that they did is without fault. Same goes the other direction. When it's a defendant who does something insanely wrong, and I'm thinking specifically here about the Micaiah Bryant case and that police officer, right? Now, BLM on the other side of this equation, they come out, LeBron James says, go get that cop, because they're going to say that every time a cop does anything that involves the death of somebody from their community, that cop is automatically at fault. That's not okay. That's insane. And I made, we made heyday about that, because that's insane. That cop's shooting was justified. She had a knife. She was swinging it at somebody. So we can easily draw a line there and say, listen, not every single cop that shoots somebody or is involved in a use of force incident is a bad, racist, white patriarchal cop. That's not the reality. And every single cop who shoots somebody is not Captain America, who deserves the country's defense at all corners. We want to try to be, as fair and objective as we can. And we want to start to identify criteria and different elements that will justify or lead us to believe that a shooting was not justified. In my opinion, if somebody is running away from you, that is a pretty good indicator. That's good indicia that they're no longer an active threat, especially when they don't have an active firearm. It's not a firearm, it's a taser. They know, because they just pulled it twice, apparently. We have @Zuck in the house says, oh gosh, I hope Rob addresses this conversation about resisting unlawful arrest. Rob, what do you think about unlawful arrest and resisting in that case? So I think that is a crime that will be prosecuted. And when resisting arrests happen, what does law enforcement do? They go and conduct the arrest. They make that arrest. And I know that the argument here is that resisting arrest might lead to a potential danger to a third party, right? If the cops don't shoot that person, then that person might go away and kill somebody or get into a car accident or something like that. I understand that argument, but I didn't see that in this case, right? I saw that this guy was running away. No indication that he had a dangerous weapon or that he was going to, go into the neighbor's house and, hold hostages or something like that. I think very clearly that the police could have rounded him up. Okay. That's what we have police for. That's why we have helicopters and all dispatch. Hey, we got somebody on foot. Okay. They have codes. This guy's fleeing on foot. Call in the backup. You don't just, anytime somebody runs from law enforcement, just say, oh, well, we got a runner. Boom, you're dead. Okay, that's not appropriate. So resisting arrest is a thing, happens all the time. It's actually a very common thing. Unlawful flight's a very common thing. So this happens regularly. And the solution is not that you just pull out your gun and just shoot somebody. Well, I don't want to chase that guy. I'm not going to call the helicopters in. Guy shouldn't have run away. What kind of moron resists arrest? All right, well, do you feel like running tonight? Me neither. All right, we're just going to shoot the guy. That's not how this works. There is due process. Cops don't get to decide to end somebody's life unless their life is being threatened. It's a balance. This was not that case. E. Dantes says, are you contending that Brooks was no longer a deadly threat because he had expended the taser? If so, you are assuming that in the melee of the situation, the officers saw when and how many times the taser had been fired. That is a lot to ask of someone who believes they are fighting for their life. So I agree with that, right? I agree, but if we change one of these facts, okay, if we say, let's say the taser was full, is that lethal force? Is that a lethal weapon? By police and their own admissions, it's less than lethal force. That's why they use it. So why are they responding to less than lethal force with lethal force? It wasn't a gun, it was a taser. So even if the taser had its 2 cartridges in there, are you thinking that he shoots Rolfe, incapacitates him, then takes the second shot in the taser, shoots the other officer, incapacitates him, and then flees off and becomes a public danger to somebody else? That's why they had to shoot him? I don't think so. But listen, I respect your opinion, E. Dantes. I know that this segment is probably going to make a lot of people mad. I understand that, but I'm trying to be as objective as I can be on some of these things. I call them both ways. So we also have T. Spev says, the detective statement said that Brooks fired the taser at the officer, making it a clean shoot. Had the officer been hit by the taser, it would have opened his firearm to the subject. So it sounds like we have some competing or some conflicting information here. So I don't know if the taser was clean or not. last question on this segment says, if you law enforcement, your force continuum extends to others in your sphere to protect. He had a live taser and he could have turned again. I don't think these officers thought they would get a free kill shot. It's a fair point. It's a very fair point, Edon Tess. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate on these close calls that we get pushback on these things, right? Because I'm going to have my opinion, and obviously there are other interpretations of that, and I really welcome this. And so sometimes people might, think that I'm getting agitated. I don't mean that. I really do like the alternative perspective, because I know that I have a little bit of a blind spot, right? I'm a criminal defense lawyer, okay? We have an entire firm of people here every day, boots on the ground, fighting in court against what I consider to be an overly oppressive prosecution. In every corner of this country, we have government officials, prosecutors, police officers bend the rules and manipulate things that ultimately hurt good people in this country, and I have a problem with that. So I know that I'm a little bit spring-loaded to say, nope, not clean. I get it. But I also understand that there's a different perspective. And so this is what's so great about this show. I mean, honestly, I get so much out of it in this context. It's like, hey, that's a great point. Good point. How do you respond to that? If you are law enforcement and you almost did just get your ass kicked, and you may have had somebody who did have an ankle holster or a knife in the back or something like that, it's a contentious situation. I would not want to be in their shoes. Let me say that. Okay, I recognize that. I do not want to be in the officer's shoes. Very difficult situation. I think that. As much as I've got a lot of grief with law enforcement and the justice system, I do think that the pendulum has really swung way too far the other direction. That this defund the police movement, that this concept that every time that there's an incident, that the police are automatically to blame, is insane. Just like the opposite is insane. That every time that there's a shooting that the police are heroes, it's insane. It's not reality. So we have to stay sort of rooted in reality. And I know that sometimes I'll get a little bit nudged this way because of that cognitive bias, that confirmation bias that I have. But you're here. You hear and you keep me on track. And so we've got one other question. Looks like this is coming in from Edon Tess. Says, you are still my guy, Edon Tess. That's why I like good conversation, so we can all think these things through. I'm more than happy to see your angles as well. Love the conversation. And I love you back, Edon Tess. And I mean that. I mean, it really is. It's a good conversation. It's good stuff to think about. And I leave the show and I go, yeah, that's a pretty good point. I may have to check in on that taser thing. Okay. And I say this a lot too. We kind of have fun on this show, and we sort of are exploring the ideas together. There are times when I get up or I go home and I'm laying in bed like this, and I go like this. Oh, shoot. Because I think of something that I said, that's not a good point. Or there's a logical flaw with that. Or I'll just think I shouldn't have said that, or what I really stepped in that one. But like a nice shirt, you change it, you put it, you clean it, you put a new one on the next day. We come back out here and we talk about the new issues, the next ones, that unfortunately keep coming down the pike. And we can explore them and have a little bit of fun, learn some things while we're doing it, and meet good people. So Edon Tess, literally thank you so much for that last message. It really is sort of the nice way to cap a conversation like this that can be a little bit contentious, because people just get so agitated, myself included. So I appreciate you helping us wrap the show up on a high note. Very much appreciated, Edon Tess. And that happened over on Locals. What a beautiful thing. Can you feel the love in the air? You should go over there and join up as well. Go on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I want to welcome the new people who signed up. We have Liz0524. Big welcome to @the_DUI guy. We're going to be talking to him tomorrow. 4:10. We're going to do a little bit of an intro, and then we're going to be interviewing him. We got some stuff to talk about. We've got Kareem165 who joined up. Welcome to you. We got Fonzico in the house, and big welcome to JWIT27043. And I want to thank all of you who asked great questions today. Shout out to The Leafy Bug and Liberty or Death. And of course, Edon Tess with that nice last message. You all are very much appreciated. Thank you for keeping the show moving. And I want to thank all of the other supporters at our Locals community. I got some good stuff cooking right now. I told you that I am working on a second recording area so that I can sort of be a little bit more prolific in some of the content that we create, because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, and that I think would be a lot of fun and maybe useful for other people. And it's all going to be happening on Locals. I'm going to sort of workshop some of that over the weekend. Got the finishing touches on this. And my point here is we're going to be doing some surveys. We're going to be asking for your input on locals. And so if you want to be a part of that, join these people to be a part of this community that we are building. I'm super excited about where it's going. All of you who are on that list, thank you so much for supporting the show. It really means the world to us. You know, YouTube says that we're in the penalty box still. They're not happy with some of the things that we're talking about, but the show must go on, and we want to be robust. We want to build this anti-fragile environment so that if anything happens elsewhere on the internet, at least we have our locals community where all of us are brick by brick building the next evolution of conversation, I think, for a certain segment of this country. There's a certain demographic of political ideology that is just not welcome elsewhere. And so we're helping to build the next evolution of that. You're a part of that. And I want to thank you so much for that support. And if you're not already over there and you want to be, you can get some very good stuff, including a free copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning: How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System. You can download this for free. It's also available as a PDF. Also available for purchase on Amazon. You can download the slides that we just went through today. You can take a look at my impeachment party document. You can download a copy of my existence systems. You can share links throughout the day on the community. Other great people are over there. You just heard from all of them. I mean, great questions today. A lot of fun conversation. Thank you so much for participating in that way. And that's it for me, my friends. Before we get out of here, quick reminder that I am a criminal defense attorney. That's really what we do here on a daily basis, is help good people who've been charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their lives. We're extremely passionate about what we do. We have a whole team of people here waking up every day just dedicated to that mission. And so if you happen to know anybody who's been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, whether it's a misdemeanor, DUI, drug offense, domestic violence, any low-level offense, high-level offenses, anything in between, anytime that you're in trouble with the law, we are primed and ready to go. We can also help clearing up old cases, old warrants, old license suspensions. If you want to restore your rights so you can go vote again, possess a firearm again, apply for federal benefits, anything like that, just kind of, get some of that legal stuff cleared up. We can help with all of it. We're very good at it because we love what we do. We're here energized, ready to rock and roll. We offer a free case evaluation. So if you or anybody you happen to know or love has been in a situation like this, we can help. We would be honored and humbled if you trusted us enough to send them our direction. We'd be very much appreciative, and we'll make sure that they leave better than they found us. And that's it, my friends. We went through a lot of meaty stuff today, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you did as well. We're going to be back here doing the same thing again at the same place, same time, same location, 4 p.m. Arizona time, which is Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central in Texas, and 7 p.m. for that Florida man out there who's, being a Florida man. We're going to be all back together at that time. I hope you join us. Everybody have a very wonderful night's rest, a nice hearty dinner. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.